Hey guys, what's up? It's Ben from My Sports Stop here, as always, with Richie Donnell. We're here talking about the 2017 NFL Draft, talking some top 10 quarterbacks. Interesting year for quarterbacks, to say the least.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your top 10. Start right away at number 10. You have Nathan Peterman from Pitt. What do you like about him?
Pittsburgh, they ran like a pro-style offense. He was originally recruited as an SEC quarterback, and as we all know, most of the premier talent comes from the SEC,
Yes.
and he just happened to be a transfer. Pittsburgh was kind of one of the teams that broke out this year in terms of offense, and a lot of that had to do with Peterman, with a number of their running backs getting hurt and having cancer. I mean, that's a weird situation to go through. But when he was asked to come up in big games, he did, and Pittsburgh was the only team to beat Clemson.
Had a big game, 308 yards. 5 touchdowns.
And that's huge, and that speaks to his ability because Clemson was considered an elite defensive team as well.
I think you could be an under-the-radar guy
Yes.
in this upcoming draft. Number 9, you have Jared Evans from Virginia Tech.
Yes.
A lot of athleticism there.
Lots of athleticism, but I think he was kind of the surprise of the group. Maybe there's an off the field issue we don't know about where he's declaring to try to get some money for family issues, something like that. It just has to be because this didn't really seem to make sense. But he passed for 3,000 yards, rushed for almost 1,000. He said it speaks to the athleticism that he had, and he fit very well for what Justin Fuente does with the spread system. I don't want to say that he's Cam Newton. He might not ever be of that level, but he is a little more polished and better than Colin Kaepernick. So he's going to kind of fit somewhere in between those two players, I would assume.
And I think if he isn't able to make it as a quarterback, I think there's a possibility where maybe you could see him convert to wide receiver and have a pretty good career for himself, something like Terrell Pryor.
Yes, yeah, he has the height and definitely the build to be able to go to a wide receiver, or maybe that he can maybe even make it as a shorter tight end instead of going onto the outside based on how fast he truly is.
He has a lot of options.
Right.
Number 8, you have a familiar name here, Chad Kelly of Ole Miss. Now, he tore his ACL in November. Did that kind of affect where you put him in the top 10?
Yeah, I think it did, just because we didn't get to see him come back for his senior year. Obviously, like he wanted to, but I think with the expectations as well. Coming back after his junior year, he led the SEC in yards and touchdowns. He was the returning leader in both those categories, and Ole Miss had a lot of expectations in terms of winning and where they really could go as a team. That is a familiar name with his uncle, Jim Kelly. But there's off-the-field issues here as well. He was kicked out of Clemson, went to junior college, but it seemed he's kind of figured that out. Just a young man making some mistakes. That's what we hope.
I think so. And if he can fix those issues, I think he could potentially even have a better NFL career than he did in college. I think he has that skill set.
Yeah, and when the article gets up, you guys will read that I think that he is probably one of the top sleepers in this draft as well.
All right. Now, number 7, you have C.J. Beathard out of Iowa. Leadership is the first thing that comes out.
No, absolutely, and I think you think about that when you think of all of Iowa quarterbacks.
Yeah.
He kind of fits that mold of what we expect from an Iowa quarterback, but he was the reason that Jake Rudock ultimately ended up transferring to Michigan last year because they were going to go to Beathard. And in terms of Iowa quarterbacks, you don't really know what you're going to get out of them at the next level, just because that college system is not necessarily quarterback friendly.
It's run heavy.
Right, run heavy. But in terms of an Iowa quarterback, he had a very good year, and last year ultimately took Iowa to the Big Ten championship game against Michigan State in his first year as a starter. So he's got big game experience, and for what Iowa does, had some good years.
Now, a big red flag for some scouts is his senior year, not as good as his junior year.
Right.
You think that might be an issue?
I think in terms of when you look at it from a scout's perspective, they're going to look at the tape and they're going to look at why. They're going to see maybe what the difference was between that junior and senior year, if it's a mechanic issue that they can fix, or if it was just a scenario where, Beathard might just be better in a West Coast style with a lot of play action, and if with Iowa's maybe offensive line and running backs not necessarily doing what we thought, that could have put a little bit more pressure on him, and he's not the guy who has that ability to be an elite quarterback and win you games. He needs the talent around him.
Okay. Coming in at number 6, maybe a bit of a surprise, but he was the only player that went undefeated in his regular season. That's Zach Terrell of Western Michigan.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a surprise to a lot of people to see him this high, but he was a 4-year starter. I mean, he was an incredible talent. I think he gets overlooked a lot because of what became of P.J. Fleck.
Yeah.
P.J. Fleck was kind of the face of that organization, obviously, and rightfully so, but I think the buzz around the head coach kind of took away from Terrell. When you look at his numbers you can put him up against anybody in the country in terms of yards and touchdowns, but he fits that mold, and obviously coming from a mid-major program is going to hurt him a little bit, but I think he can fit into that mold of maybe a Ben Roethlisberger who could make it in the NFL coming from a smaller school.
Now, I think a lot of people are going to look at his stats and his achievements for last season. They're going to say, yeah, but he was passing to Corey Davis, one of the nation's greatest receivers.
Right, but I mean, in some cases, I mean, you can also look at that other quarterbacks that necessarily, that have that favorite target. Everybody's going to have their go-to target, their favorite guy that they throw to all the time and lean on that person. And at that level, it's not like Alabama, where Hurts can just drop back and find anybody. Terrell's working with less talent. And granted, Corey Davis will probably be a first-round pick. Terrell wasn't necessarily working with the most elite team, but still had elite numbers.
All right. Coming in at number 5 on your list, a guy coming from a very pass-heavy offense, Patrick Mahomes from Texas Tech.
Right. I think the most underrated thing with Mahomes is going to be his athleticism. I think when you think about Texas Tech, or you think about that air raid style of play, it's pass, which he did. But I got to watch him against Oklahoma, and he had almost 100 yards rushing. You don't really think of those rushing yards when you think of a Texas Tech quarterback.
Right.
And I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong. I think he could be the guy that really breaks that mold of Texas Tech's quarterbacks not having success in the NFL.
Easily their most athletic quarterback they've had in that school.
Right, yeah, completely agree. And he's got the big arm and everything else that goes along with that system as well. The interesting thing about him is going to be that he was drafted to pro baseball coming out of high school. If he does end up failing in the NFL, or he gets a lot of money from Major League Baseball, which way he can kind of end up going.
Okay, number 4, another big surprise here. A lot of people have him at number 1.
Yep.
Here you have him at number 4, Mitch Trubisky out of North Carolina. Why so low?
Yeah, I think a lot of people the knock on him is going to be the lack of experience, the 1 year, and it's not necessarily that for me. He's a big guy. He's got a lot of athletic ability, but for me, when you think of top flight quarterbacks usually have to push the ball down the field in the NFL. Of all the quarterbacks on my list, he had the lowest yard per completion.
Okay.
He was under 8 yards per completion, which tells me it's similar to a dink and dunk type of system. Now, could he come in and possibly all of a sudden gain some strength and start chucking the ball down the field? Absolutely. But he reminds me of Alex Smith, and I think if anybody could go back to that draft, they're going to draft Aaron Rodgers before they draft Alex Smith. And that's no knock against Alex Smith, but I think for me, comparing Trubisky to Alex Smith, if you're not willing to go back and take Alex Smith number 1 all over again, I don't think you can make that claim for Trubisky going number 1 as well.
I think he has. He's far from being an NFL starter, but I think a lot of offensive gurus out there is going to view Trubisky as a blank canvas, somebody who they can develop in their own system, could potentially be, a Pro Bowl quarterback.
Right, and he's got the athleticism to go with it, which helps.
Yeah.
He just needs that seasoning and a little bit of more show me to his game.
All right, number 3, a guy you really like, Brad Kaaya out of Miami.
Yeah, 3-year starter. I mean, he's been throwing the ball real well, and his best games have come against the best teams that they've faced. He had a great game against Florida State as a sophomore, and I think this year as a junior, a lot of people kind of fell off on him because a lot of people fell off on Miami in general.
Okay.
With the new coach, new system, new everything, a lot of people kind of got away from Miami with the whole Miami being back thing. But Kaaya is extremely talented. There's a lack of mobility there, which is scary, especially in today's age. So you're kind of thinking somebody more along the lines of a Tom Brady, a Peyton Manning, somebody who's going to kind of stand in the pocket and pick his way. So if he can get a good receiver here or a good tight end, I mean, I think this kid could be one of the better quarterbacks in the league, maybe top 15, top 10 quarterback at one point.
Be interesting to see where he falls in the draft,
Right.
especially with a lot of teams that need a quarterback.
Yeah.
Number 2 now, you have Deshaun Kaiser from Notre Dame. This guy is a physical animal when it comes to quarterback.
No, absolutely. I think you're going to see a lot, and you're going to hear a lot of comparisons to Cam Newton. That's similar, that big arm, athletic, can run when needed, can make plays. But what's going to hurt him is Notre Dame. Notre Dame struggled heavily this year. They had a brand new wide receiving core, and I think a lot of it had to do with that defense, and the record was so bad. It wasn't necessarily Kaiser's fault, but the quarterback's going to get the blame for not being able to create that success. But I think when you look at all the intangibles, all the measurables, and watch him really throw the ball and use his athleticism, you're going to see a guy who could have possibly the highest ceiling of anybody in this class.
I will say he can probably throw the long ball better than any of these quarterbacks.
Right.
He has the arm, obviously, but he has a surprising amount of accuracy. It's just beautiful to watch.
Right.
And then number 1, you have the champion himself, Shawn Watson.
Yeah, this was easy for me. All season, I've been saying that Deshaun Watson is the number 1 quarterback. That was the train that I jumped on, and then I stuck to it. And a lot of people said, no, it's not going to be him. And then you saw the rise of Kaiser, and then you saw the rise of Trubisky, and now you're seeing other quarterbacks start to climb. But Watson is just, to me, is the complete package. There's some questions about the accuracy and his throwing the deep ball, but he throws a very good ball. He's athletic, he can get out of the pocket, and he's tough, which you need in a quarterback these days, especially as much as they're getting hit with the athletes that you see on the defense. He played on a torn ACL as a freshman, and Alabama just beat the mess out of him, and he kept coming back, and he makes plays when needed. He made a great fourth-quarter comeback drive against Louisville, and then obviously in the national championship, he made the plays against Alabama, arguably the best team in the biggest game.
Also played in 4 playoff games in the past 2 years, so I think having that experience is absolutely priceless. So that's your top 10.
That's my top
Let's take
10.
a look at my top 10 here. A lot of the same people, a couple changes. For example, I have Trubisky at number 2. I think he has a lot of potential here that, like I said, an offensive coach could really use to their advantage. I like Mahomes at number 4. A guy you didn't have on your list that I really like is Davis Webb out of California. Only had 1 year as a starter with Jared Goff, being Jared Goff's backup for a lot, but he showed that he has a lot of talent, and I think that he could maybe be a surprise player in this upcoming draft. So that is our top 10s. What do you think? Who is someone that we missed? Let us know in the comments, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember to check out more of our videos and our website, mysportsstop.com.